Oh, hello everybody. I'm Mike. This is Bianca Jordan. Hello, Bianca.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So we're doing another Facebook Live on a Friday. We'll be doing these basically every Friday, a lawyer forward live session. We'll also take these recordings and put them on a podcast, so you'll be able to access it on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll also have it on YouTube, and it'll live in the Facebook group. So if you are hearing this out in the world, go join the Facebook group. Just search Lawyer Forward in the Facebook search bar and you will find us. What we're doing, Bianca, with these conversations is really just a chill chat. Tell us a bit about you, about your practice. We will pivot. We'll talk about some things that are just randomly on my mind because I just babble sometimes about things that are interesting to me. So, welcome to the the spin cycle that is my brain. Bianca, tell us a bit about your practice for some context. Tell us about you, where you are, what kind of law you practice, that kind of thing.
Sure. So I'm Bianca Jordan. I am an immigration attorney at Brazen Legal, which is an immigration law firm based in Massachusetts. However, I'm able to assist people all over the world as long as they're trying to live in the US. I primarily help people get legal status without leaving the US, but I also help people come here as well. So the majority of cases I handle are green cards, temporary protected status, citizenship, immigration waivers, and I also help people get green cards if they're in deportation.
Sorry, I'm doing the typical technology thing where I'm going and trying to find out, are we in fact live? Guys, if you are watching live, you can actually ask questions. This app allows me to see your questions. So you can ask Bianca questions about her practice and her life, um, all the craziness that we deal with as lawyers. So, Bianca, I want to get into that a little bit because you mentioned that you're doing immigration and 2021, weird year, obviously, a lot of move to online. It seems like from the beginning of your practice and even to now, you had this sort of unfair advantage of you're doing a federal practice, something that, like you said, you can literally help people anywhere. Talk about that in terms of determining a practice area. Did you do immigration and then say, oh, I can help all kinds of people? Or did you say, I want to prioritize being able to be, cross border with this because it's the apocalypse? Immigration's a good choice. How did you make that decision?
So honestly, I fell into immigration law. I didn't really know what I wanted to do until law school. I did the immigration law clinic there, fell in love with it. When I started my practice, I did immigration law and business law. I have my MBA and I was able to use that, pair it with law and help small businesses in Massachusetts. For immigration, I never thought of it as being something where I could help people everywhere. Over the years, I started realizing that I could because people kept contacting me from out of Massachusetts. And I looked into it, just verified that it's federal, so I can help them. And it kind of happened organically from there.
Typical lawyer story of I sort of walked into things and kept rolling with it. But it does give you an unfair advantage in a sense that your marketing efforts. So, for example, last week we talked to a lawyer who has, and the week before actually, has largely built her practice on tools like Instagram or whatever. With Facebook ads, for example, you're able to say, I want this geographic area. But a lot of the expertise building, authority building kind of content work that we talk about at Lawyer Forward, you can do that and still serve people, right? Like they could literally watch your video or whatever in India and say, "Ooh, I want some help." How do you is that an enabling thing in your mind, or is it like, holy crap, I got to serve the whole world now in terms of content and authority and being is when's that balance? When do you feel like this is awesome, and when do you feel like, holy crap, I cannot love everyone?
Um, I don't know if you ever really find that balance because it's kind of like once it's in the internet, it's out there. So whoever's going to see it's going to see it. I'm a natural introvert. I don't really like being around a lot of people. So the fact that a lot of people do watch my videos from all over the world sometimes freaks me out. I have had situations where I'm hanging out in Boston and someone comes up to me and they're like, "Are you the brazen lawyer? I love your Instagram." So it's kind of a little bit weird because strangers are coming up to me now and it's kind of awkward.
Yeah.
But you don't have to serve everyone. And actually, if you serve everyone, you're serving no one. So I don't try to market my stuff to everyone. Most of my clients are Black and Brown immigrants from the Caribbean. So I tend to market my content to them. I feel that, especially with immigration law, and the legal profession in general is very like white, and a lot of people, a lot of my clients who have immigration issues, they look like me, but there aren't a lot of lawyers that look like them that
Right.
are helping them. So I
Yeah.
am very big on creating culturally relevant content for the people that I feel definitely need this information in a way that they can understand it. I'm very big on Instagram. It's my favorite platform. I actually built my law firm on Instagram, and that was really out of necessity. When I started my law firm, I literally had no money. I was literally homeless, actually, and I had to start from somewhere. But I don't feel like I have to cater to everyone. For example, right now, there are a lot of refugees coming over from Afghanistan. And it's not that I can't help them, but I don't know enough about the humanitarian crisis and options that they have in the US to get help. So rather than try to jump into an area of law that I know nothing about to help a demographic of people that I've never really interacted with purposely, I am sending them to the lawyers I know who could best help them. So I don't really feel like I have to help everyone.
It's interesting. There's a couple of threads in there. One thing that I thought about when you mentioned, coming out of law school, you were homeless. That basically happened to us. We right after I graduated law school, our house burned down in a wildfire in Austin, and so in a similar way, like I didn't have a billboard, I didn't have a sign. I mean, we were struggling to find a place to sleep, and so Facebook for at that time was there. I don't think there was an Instagram in 2011 or whatever that was. So in a similar way, I had to do it. And what I did, the thread that I wanted to pull on was, it sounds like it was similar in the sense that I used Facebook to find referral partners and what we would call referral partners. Basically, I was just making friends. And, the friends would send me stuff for whatever reason. When you mentioned that you're doing content on Instagram, there's a there's almost a difference between I create content, it brings everybody in, and I say, okay, I'm going to go help Black and Brown people from the Caribbean, versus I'm going to go make content specifically for Black and Brown people in the Caribbean that is like really targeted to their situation. It sounds like you're doing more of that. Am I getting that right?
I guess indirectly I am. And I mean, my clients aren't only Black and Brown immigrants from the Caribbean. That just tends to happen, especially because I'm Haitian American and I
Mm.
speak different languages. So that's typically the clients I get. But I also have a ton of clients from India, Italy, France, New Zealand. So I have clients from everywhere. But the majority of people that come to me happen to be Caribbean because I am.
Mm. Mm. It's an interesting. I mentioned in our prep call that my partner Angela and I took a divorce with this guy from Morocco, and somehow we got like stuck in the Moroccan referral network, and we kept getting these cases with these people from Morocco because I could speak 5 words of Arabic still. And those networks are really interesting. Do you feel like when people talk about niching, they say, really focus on whether it's a problem or a specific group? Presumably, one could say, I'm only going to serve people from the Caribbean because I understand the jurisdictions, I understand the issues. I can serve all of the United States, but they can come from this area. Do you ever feel that kind of pressure? Do you think that would be empowering or something that would rob opportunity? How do you see that sort of audience really hyper targeting?
I think for some people it works. I know a lot of immigration attorneys who primarily serve certain demographics. So they only do, for example, they'll only do content in Spanish because they're trying to target people from like Latin American countries. I know a Portuguese attorney who only works with Portuguese people.
Hmm.
I don't do that. It works for some people. I don't think it would really work for me in my practice. But you can pick your niche. You can either niche like that with where you're only helping people from a certain demographic, or you can niche in practice areas. Like for me, I'm working on niching down to getting to a point where I'm only doing adjustment of status cases, which for people that aren't aware, adjustment of status just means getting your green card in the US. Eventually, I don't want to help people from outside of the US come to the US. So it just depends on what your niche is. But Everybody needs a niche because, again, if you're trying to do everything and help all of the people, you're really helping no one. And if
Yeah.
people don't really know what you're known for, then they're not going to know to be able to send people to, because they're like, I don't really know what Bianca does. She does like 50, 11 million things. Like, what kind of case does she handle? But if
Right.
people know that I only do green cards, they're not going to send me, like, if they know I only do family based green cards, they're not going to send me an H-1B visa or another employment type of case. They're only going to send me what they know that I do. But if no one knows what you do because you either do too much or you're not telling people what you do, then you're not going to get anything.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, you've targeted this expertise, even knowing that networks are still going to work. You're still going to get
Mm-hmm.
a lot of your future cases will come from referrals, which means just naturally the way social networks work, it's going to build out. You saw this, like, as an aside, with Clubhouse, which I think is not cool anymore. But Clubhouse just exploded in the American Black community because friends would tell friends, and it was really interesting when you first went in there. People would say, oh, like, this is like the ideal place for the
Mm-hmm.
black community to get together because there are so many other members of the black community. It's like, well, yeah, but that's a self-reinforcing loop, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
but to look at that and say that, as you're doing, like, that doesn't have to dictate what I do. I need to pass the test of, like, what does Bianca do,
Right.
and other people. It's a really interesting thing to focus on expertise.
Definitely. Everyone should focus on what they're really great at and what they love doing. It doesn't make sense to do something you hate, especially if you're an entrepreneur. Like, we literally started our businesses because we wanted to do what we wanted to do. So you have to get to a place where you're not only doing what you want to do, but you're also like niching down to make sure that it's all in alignment. And I know a lot of people are very iffy and afraid of niching down because they think if they're removing options, that's less money for them. I do less and make more money. Like, it doesn't make sense, but that's exactly what happens when you niche down.
Right. Yeah, especially because nobody else can do what you're doing as well. Yeah, I want to avoid having a whole Instagram conversation, given that we had that conversation 2 weeks ago. I keep getting this pressure. A buddy of mine, Nick, makes fun of me all the time because I'm doing, like, legal content like this, and yet I
Mm-hmm.
have birds that cuss at me in the background. And he's like, dude, get on Instagram, get on TikTok, get on whatever, and have birds cuss at you all day. You'll be wealthy for the rest of your life. Like, just go become a. He wants me to be an Instagram model, which makes a lot of sense. But avoiding that conversation, I wanted to talk to you about something that you and I talked about before, because I think it's really interesting. And it's this: the word that you used was ministry, a sense of, I don't know if purpose is the word, or how you use that word in defining some of your business decisions. As you mentioned, when you're a solo, you're the show. Like, you get to make all of your calls. Nobody else gets to make the calls for you, within the bounds of ethics. But you are making the call. Talk to me about how your personal values, your worldview feeds into how you design your firm.
So, first and foremost, I wanted to create a law firm where I felt, or I made immigrants really feel valued, wanted, and included. I've heard horror stories from immigrants who have gone to other law firms and people are like making fun of their accent, or they're treating them like a second class citizen, and they're just very derogatory, or they're assuming things like there's a stereotype that all immigrants are poor and they have no money and you need to take pity on them, which is so not true. And I'm actually in a lot of Facebook groups with other attorneys where I hear them say derogatory things about their immigration clients. And I'm like, why are you doing this work? So I wanted to make sure that my law firm really centered the immigrant journey from start to finish. So I don't care what accent you have, like, all accents welcome. Like, I don't care, what kind of food you eat, as long as you're gonna like make me a plate so I can have some as well. And I just really want my clients to feel welcome and comfortable being their whole authentic self when they're interacting with me in my law firm, whether it's in person at my office or on Zoom. As you can see, I have like blue hair right now, wearing a Black Panther shirt. Like, this is how I show up in real life. Obviously, not in immigration court and stuff, but I just want people to feel like they can be their authentic selves when they're coming here. Immigration is such an emotional journey. You don't know why people are
Sure.
coming here. Nobody wakes up one day and they're like, gee, I think I'll go to the US illegally today. Like, there's something that makes people make that journey to come here. And, so I just really want to make sure that I'm embracing that and not bestowing judgment and just making people feel as comfortable as possible. So that's really what I built my law firm on.
Hey, immigration court could use a little Wakanda forever, every once in a while, just walking in. Um, yeah, so I did. You and I talked about this a little bit. Um, I did what apparently every middle-aged white guy did during the pandemic and started gardening and started a podcast because apparently that's what all of us did to cope with the sudden like, oh, we don't have the environment anymore where everybody promotes us for unqualified reasons. And so I did all of that. I gardened, I started a podcast, I bought a Vespa. I had a bit of a midlife crisis. And the word that I ran into actually over and over again in my mind was this word ministry. In my religious upbringing, that was not a word that we use, but this idea of like your I don't know if purpose is the word. Like I'm reading a book about purpose, about like philosophically what the word purpose means. And there's a lot of back and forth about, finding your passion and all this stuff. There's like a counterculture to finding your passion. But for you to say, I have a work to do and it's other focused, so now I'm going to go back and design my contribution, right? That's an interesting feedback loop. How talk to me about that if you got something to add on that about that instead of saying what do I love and therefore I'm going to go do it. You said how can I serve someone? Now let me incorporate that into my design.
Yeah, definitely. So, as far as being an attorney, this is something that I truly feel called, that I feel like I was called to do this work. I grew up Catholic. I like to say sometimes that I'm a recovering Catholic, but I'm still very spiritual. I'm not so much religious anymore, but I talk to God all the time, and I really feel that God called me to do this work. I decided to become an attorney when I was 12 years old. So, in a way, I was like, I've been training my whole life to do this. And so for me, I wanted to bring my own spin on it. So I want to bring my personality. I've never been like a boring traditional suited up lawyer. Like I have visible tattoos. I used to have my tongue pierced and other piercings. Like I'm kind of out there. Like there's a reason why I'm the brazen lawyer. And I want to incorporate that into my law firm because I think that for one, like I think earlier we said that like lawyers are very like difficult people to work with. We're very straight laced, serious all the time. But at the end of the day, we're human beings, and I think that sometimes lawyers even forget that about themselves, which indirectly causes them to treat others the way that they do. So for me, I just look at it as I was called to do this work. It's kind of like my ministry. I say it sometimes, this is not my ministry. If I don't feel like doing it, or if I don't feel like it would be authentic, if I just feel like I'm just jumping on a bandwagon or something, I'm like, it's not my ministry. I shouldn't really do it.
Mm.
And I just kind of hold on to that because I don't feel like I need to jump on whatever bandwagons and like go help all of the people in the world. I feel that God put me on this earth to do a specific thing, and I'm just tapped into that and focusing on that. So anything else that's not part of that ministry, I don't really need to worry about it. And anything that is for me is not going to pass me by. So I really don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about that in the legal space. I recognize that there's risk with this. I remember talking to a lady once about she was in the legal consulting field, and I said something to her about as a woman, is that difficult for you? And she told me later that me asking that question made her feel othered. So I'm going to ask a line of questions that I think hopefully you can read my intentions. I remember giving a talk in church once where I talked about feeling othered, right? And I said, I have a beard, and I don't feel like I fit into the culture, and that takes away from my spiritual experience, my personal experience, my feeling part of the network. I'm not an immigrant. I don't have an accent. I'm not disabled. I'm not gay. I'm not whatever it is that sort. I have a beard. I'm a white guy with a beard, and I still feel othered. The legal industry, you know, as much as any religious community, has a white guy dominant culture, right? Like and there was I did a podcast that got me in trouble as well about a paper where he talked about a lot of the norms of professionalism actually are rooted in a white guy history. They come from England at a period when literally there were only white guys. Those were the only people who were allowed to do it. And so even today, what we call professionalism is a lot of times racialized and gender defined. And again, with the caveat that hopefully you read my intentions, if you're comfortable talking about this, I think it's a really interesting thing because you're saying it sounds like freaking screw that. Like, I'm going to be brazen. I'm going to be me. I'm going to stand out. Professionalism is going to be how I define it. Talk about how you do that.
How much time do we
I know,
have?
right?
Because I could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
This is like one of my favorite things to talk about. So I've always been like, screw the status quo, like my whole entire life. Like I drove my parents insane because I was always like, I've never been one of those kids that you tell them something and they just go with it. I'm kind of like, why do we have to do this just because it's always been done this way? Why do I have to wear a suit every day if I feel like I'm in a straitjacket wearing one and I'm not going to
Right.
be able to be my best self to help my client? Um, but yeah, the legal profession definitely has a straight white guy problem, but so does America. So
Sure.
for me, I feel like just being an attorney is like a form of resistance in a way because there was a time where black people couldn't even practice law or even go to law school, forget practicing law. So the fact that I am a Haitian American attorney at all is revolutionary. And as far as people thinking certain things that non-straight white men do is not professional, like you're gonna get this black girl magic every day whether you like it or not, like because I don't know how to be anything
Right.
other than myself.
Right.
So like I do wear braids sometimes. I'll have my fro. Years ago I used to write for Miss JD, which is an organization that really helps to empower women law students and lawyers in the profession. And I wrote, after I passed the bar, I wrote about my experience where someone was like, but you don't look like a lawyer, because I had a fro, I had piercings, I have tattoos. She's like, but you don't look like a lawyer. And at the time, if you Googled a black woman lawyer, you didn't really get anything. You might get Claire Huxtable, but you didn't really get anything else other than that. And then we had a series of shows like Scandal. So you had, Kerry Washington playing Olivia Pope. You had How to Get Away with Murder with Viola Davis playing Annalise Keating. You have Suits with Jessica, I can't remember her name, but you started to see other black women lawyers, fictional characters, but still you started to see more of that. And I think that the more people are able to see things like that, and then also the more that, non-straight white guys are in the legal field doing their thing and being themselves in the process, then we get to change the narrative about what's professional and what's not. Because
Right.
I won a green card for my client yesterday in immigration with my blue hair. This is temporary. Like I just wanted to do it for summer, but I can do my job whether my hair is purple or pink or black or whatever. I can do my job whether my hair is straight or in a cute little afro. Like it doesn't matter what I look like as long as I can get the job done. And we have to just constantly challenge the status quo because, there are more non-straight white guys in the world than there are straight white guys.
It's going to drive me crazy that I can't remember Gina Torres's character's name in Suits. Because
It's like a something.
I love her. She's a warrior woman, to
Yeah.
use Wash's term from Firefly. Um, my wife will get that reference. So, well, as an aside, I'm a Utah Jazz fan. I'm like one of the only people in the entire world who's a Jazz fan, and I recognize that. But Donovan Mitchell, who plays for the Jazz, has been very vocal about race issues, particularly because he's in a state that is so predominantly white, and talking about these issues. And there was a politician, so they were passing something about critical race theory, even though it's never taught in Utah. It's apparently this super present thing, whatever. And Donovan came out very vocally against it. Was like, this law is stupid. This has no place. So this politician made waves a couple days ago because he said in a public place, "Oh, we're going to have to educate Donovan. Donovan needs some educating," which is incredibly patronizing to a black man who's like trying to use his voice. And so somebody asked him about that. He was in an interview about basketball, right? And somebody asked him about this encounter, and he said something that has stuck with me since. He said, "Being a black man in America is a job." and he meant to say like, I can't deal with this crap right now. Like I gotta go be a basketball player. For you, how do you, as you do that sort of brazenness, as you do that, I'm gonna be almost like a an activism by defiance kind of thing. How do you balance your own mental health and make sure that you're taking care of yourself and not turning that into a job that weighs on you that heavily?
I leave the United States as often as I can. So I just came back from a birthday trip in Grenada. I came back this week and I fell in love with the island. And everyone was just happy and peaceful. I love leaving the US and traveling to the Caribbean because when I'm there, I'm just me. I'm just a human being. When I'm in America, you see that I'm black first, then I'm a woman. You make all types of judgments against me based on what I look like, which, by the way, I can't control. I can't control that I was born black. And it's a lot. It's a lot like walking into stores and having people assume you're going to steal just because of what you look like.
Mm,
Whereas when I leave the U.S. and I'm in Grenada or Haiti or wherever I am, I just get to be me. I'm not
right.
in a box. Although sometimes they're like, "Oh, you're an American," and they're kind of like they kind of cringe a little bit. But other than that, I get to just be me. But in America, I'm black first, then a woman, then I'm this, then I'm that. God forbid I can't just be myself. And
Yeah.
then you I have to navigate all that stuff and then also constantly check my emotions because God forbid you do something that justifiably pisses me off. I can't react or else I'm now going to be the angry black woman or whatever. And it's a lot. It's very taxing. It is kind of like a job that we're not getting paid for. And, we're not even getting paid enough because we don't make the same amount of money as the straight white men do. So it's a job that we're underpaid for, and it's very taxing, and it does weigh on your mental health. For me, I do talk to my therapist. I talk to my therapist about this like all the time. But for me, also, it's literally leaving the US and going somewhere where my life is actually valued.
It's interesting because even this conversation, right? Like the fact that we're having this conversation right now, you're not going to go on a legal podcast in Grenada and somebody say, "What's it like being black in Grenada?" Right? Like nobody's
Right.
asking you that.
Exactly. And
And,
a lot of people don't even know that they're black until they come here. Like I've had so many clients, I've
mm,
had people in my family who never even realize like, oh my God, I'm a black person until they get to America. Because when they're in their home country, they get to just be. And
yeah.
that's so peaceful. So I'm always in search of that, which is why I like to leave as often as I can.
Yeah, it's. I mean, just as an aside, there was this whole thing with Rudy Gobert, who plays for the Jazz, who's black, but he's French black, which
Mm-hmm.
is it to the other black players on the team is like some kind of differentiator and weaker
Mm-hmm.
and not as masculine, and it's just interesting the way like the policing of the lines of blackness from the white people has created
Mm-hmm.
this sort of weird culture that polices the lines among the black community as well.
Right.
But I wonder, my old law partner, Angela, who is black, we had this conversation once where I said, I don't want to co opt this struggle. This is not my struggle. I don't, as the white dude, I don't want to go out and pontificate all the time about my black girl magic or whatever. And she said, well, the position that you're in is in the position where when you say something, people listen. It's not just another black person complaining or whatever. People will listen. So go use your privilege, use that power. If you see a lot of these activities from law firms and from bar associations where they have diversity week or whatever the shit they call it, that it's just some salve to try to make people feel better. There's one black person in the entire firm. They're always the head of diversity or in inclusion or whatever. It's got to ring hollow for those of us who want to make conscious decisions to overcome subconscious bias. How do we any again, I'm going to ask you to be the black teacher here, which is so frustrating, but how would you advise somebody on how to do that mindfully, how to do that in a way that doesn't, in trying to include, still other? Because I feel like even head of diversity and inclusion is sort of an othering title.
That's pretty much all we get. It's kind of like you're the black person, be the head of all the of fixing all the black issues. It does ring hollow at times because we can do more than that. We can be attorneys, like we can run legal divisions and things like that. We're capable of doing more than running diversity and inclusion. And for the record, you could have diversity, but if no one's included, if you don't listen to these non-straight white
Oh
male
my
voices,
gosh.
then
This
all you've got is diversity and no inclusion.
Thank you. Like this,
Like, what's
oh,
the point?
you're gonna get me going on a rant. So like, I'm writing a piece about this right now, actually, which is why it's relevant. But like, if you read any of the cases from the Supreme Court, which all come from Texas, by the way, because I went to the racist law school, about fighting affirmative action or whatever, what the Supreme Court always said is diversity is key to the thinking like a lawyer experience, unless you bounce ideas off of each other. But if you think back to the law school experience, you never talk to anyone, right? Like you're in a bubble, you never experience diversity in any way that would actually change your mind. You just want your school pictures to not look ridiculous because
Right.
you've got nobody. This is like, if you're going, just sorry, pet peeve to all
Once
of you
again.
listening who are ever involved in these kinds of activities. Don't talk about diversity without inclusion, right? Like actually getting people part of conversations, who look different, because that's what the Supreme Court is talking about with our brains being different. Like ignoring the social justice stuff, which I think is perfectly valid and worth talking about. The diversity of heuristics and mental models and experiences and ways of thinking, that has huge value to you and to your firm. And like, don't be a dick and just invite brown people to. Sorry, sorry.
Right. And
This
also
is like a pet
and
peeve
also
of mine.
diversity, right, same. And diversity is not just like let's sprinkle in a few black people and we've done our job. Like diversity again is really anybody who's not a straight white male in America, somebody who is not able-bodied. It could be a woman, it could be, like a lesbian woman
Yep.
or a gay man. It's just but if you have these people at your table, but you silence them, you don't let them talk, you don't listen to them, they say something, you ignore it, and literally as soon as Chad says it, it's like, oh my God, revolutionary idea, even though
Chad.
like Bianca just said it. So it's like you have to listen to people. And I feel like
Right.
a lot of the people that say that they want to do the diversity and inclusion work don't want to listen because their truth, or when they hear the truth, it's going to challenge their whole entire existence and they're not ready for that conversation. But people don't realize, like I have this conversation all the time with one of my friends who I used to work with. He's also a white guy, and we're always having these heated conversations, but he listens to me. And it's really just about helping him understand that we could both work at the same company but have two different experiences. It doesn't mean that yours is wrong and mine's right or vice versa. It just means that our experiences are different and it happened. And I find that a lot of people will think, oh, well, I put up my black square on Instagram, so I'm woke now. Or I hired a black woman and, I did my part. Why are you playing the race card still? Like, isn't this enough for
Right.
you? Like, no, it's not enough. In 2021, we're still having these conversations, which is ridiculous. So it's just a matter of being open to listening and being okay with the fact that what you hear is definitely, for some people, it might sound like a shock to you, but don't take it personally. It's not like black people everywhere are saying like all white people are evil. We just want you to listen to us. We just want an opportunity to show you how amazing we can be too. And you just have to listen to that and embrace that a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe bringing it back to solo practice and to the business that we do, to relieve you of having to be the black professor for the rest of our conversation. But the this thing that you're talking about of diversity as an experienced thing that has a net benefit for everyone's thinking, we as lawyers sell our thinking. So this thing that we're talking about of incorporating voices, I know it's really hard as a solo because you get in your little bubble, but you really have to find ways to connect to communities, to even in your product design. I mean, that's what the book Lawyer Forward is all about, is incorporating that sort of diversity of specialization and expertise in your product design. How do you as a lawyer make sure that you don't get into your own practice bubble? How are you encouraging your life outside to be robust and healthy? And even in your product design, how are you bringing different kinds of thinking into the way you provide your services?
So I think for me, so similar to you, I have a garden. So I've been gardening since I think like 2013. So I garden. I try to take breaks from my work. Otherwise, I will go crazy. I also make sure that I'm speaking to people that are different than me and think differently than I do. I speak to people like I speak to both like Democrats, Republicans, Trump supporters, non people that are pro-abortion, anti. I try to make sure that I'm having conversations with other people, even if they believe something that I don't believe, because I genuinely do want to see where they're coming from. I want to see, like why they might be anti-vax, why they're pro-vax, why why they believe the things that they do, because otherwise I'll never be challenged. I'll just be in my little bubble, think what I have to think, and not even care about the real world that's out there. And I want to know what people are thinking and what they're struggling with and what their challenges are, so that if there's something that I can help them with in my business, I'm able to do that. Whether it's, someone dealing with persecution in their home country, like how can I help them get immigration status that way? Or if I know, an immigrant is like struggling because I don't know, like they can't get vaccinated or they don't
Right.
want to, I can incorporate that into how I'm talking to people, so that for certain things I'm very like black and white, period. But for my content, I try to make it as like
Mm.
objective as possible, so that I'm not excluding people based on their thinking, unless it's the things that I'm very like non-negotiable about, like babies should not be in cages. Like if you think otherwise, then there's really nothing for us to talk
We're not
about.
going to be
But
buddies.
other
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But other than that, like I try to just make my content like I like to spark conversations pretty much. I like
Yeah.
to encourage people. A lot of people say I ruffle feathers. I mean, it is what it is, because there's a lot of stuff going on in this country and in the world. And if we can't even have a civil conversation about it, it's never going to go away. If people,
Yeah.
particularly white people, don't want to sit and examine their role in racism, then we're never going to get over it, because black people didn't start it. So we shouldn't be tasked with ending it.
Yeah, I think in terms of content, that's smart in the sense that there's a lot of push now to like be yourself loudly. I use that phrase all the time, be yourself loudly. But if you're kind of an asshole, being yourself loudly means being an asshole kind of loudly, and you could pay a cost for that, and that's true. So hopefully, in all that creation, you continue to do things that make you question your assumptions, that make you talk to people, because being yourself loudly is then an asset. And the other thing, as I think about what you're talking about and overlapping it with what I talk about in Lawyer Forward, and trying to bring in diverse voices, even in how we deliver services, it's uncomfortable. That's the thing with subconscious bias, is you then have to make a conscious act in order to overcome it. And the consciousness feels like effort. The consciousness feels like an affect, like it's fake,
Mm-hmm.
like it's work. Guess what, Carl? It is, right? That's the nature of subconscious bias. You have to make a
Right.
conscious effort. So, hopefully, what people
Right.
will do is obviously paying attention to these issues. Diversity is a lived experience, but also diversity incorporated in your product, in your service, in the way you help people. It will only make you a better lawyer. Bianca, if people want to hang out with you and learn more about your practice, what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Sure. So I live on Instagram. I'm at Brazen Lawyer. I'm really Brazen Lawyer on all social media, but I primarily live on Instagram. So if you actually want to see what I'm doing in my law firm and learn about immigration stuff, um, Instagram is the best way to follow me. If you want to read my shenanigans tweets, then you can follow me on Twitter.
Gonna make me get on Instagram. Yeah, Twitter is my place because it's cheaper than a therapist. Guys, thank you for joining us again on the Facebook Live Friday Lawyer Forward edition. We will be doing these each week. As I said, we'll add it to the podcast, to YouTube. They're in the Facebook group. Join the Facebook group if you're hearing this elsewhere. We'll keep doing it. If you want to talk to us about things in your practice and some topics that are on your mind, just email me. I'm at mike@lawyerforward.com, and we will get you set up. Bianca, thank you. You guys have a good day.
Thanks so much for having me.